Hello guys, this video will be an introduction to classes in C++. We're going to go over how to build a class. We're going to talk about the public and private members. We're going to talk about default constructor and then how to make getter functions to retrieve the attributes for an object, and also, we're going to learn how to make a setter function so that we can change the object's attributes. And finally, we're going to add a member function to our class that does some kind of action, some behavior function. Now let's get started. So this is what we're going to build. In this video, we're going to build a class called person that's going to represent, as you can read, a person. So a class is like a blueprint for us so that we can build objects out of that class. For example, in this case, we have a blueprint for a person. What are the attributes for a person? Well, a person has a name, has an age, height, weight, and so on. So those are the attributes, and typically they would be the private members of a class. Attributes go into the private section, and we're going to talk about private public in a little bit later. So let me just give an overview of what a class is, and then the person has behavior, which are the functions. What can a person do? A person can talk, and a person walks, runs, and so on, right? So these are going to be in the public section, and they're going to be functions that do something. For example, you can get a person to say hello, and a function to walk, and so on. So class is a blueprint, so that it acts as the plan for objects to be built. So you build objects based on the class blueprint. In this case, we have a class person, so we can start building objects based on this plan that we have set here, and we can have as many objects as we want based on this class. And that's about it for an introduction for what a class is. So for this video, you want to build this person class that represents a person, and we're gonna have a default constructor, getter functions, setter functions, and a private attributes, which are name and age and so on. We're gonna do some testing with the object. We're gonna create an instance of the class, which is an object called person, and we're gonna do some operations on it. And this is how we want to get to. Okay, so let's get started here in this other file from scratch. So first thing we want to do is we want to create a class. How do we create a class in C++? You say class, give it a name. Typically start with the first letter uppercase, person, some braces there, and you have to end with a semicolon here. Other programming languages typically you don't need to do this, but in C++ you need a semicolon at the end of the class block. So don't forget this. Unless if you don't put this, you're gonna get error. Okay? And then what we're gonna do here is we're gonna set up the sections. The public section, everything after this keyword here, public followed by colon, will be taken as public. And then we're going to put the private section. Everything after private will be taken up as private, okay? So what does it mean, public and private? So public means anybody can call a function or access some variable from your object, an instance of your object. You create an object called person, And then you can do, this is just like doing normal variables like int a, but instead the type of the variable here is going to be type person, and you give it a name. I just gave it person. You can give anything like somebody or whatever. So I declare this variable of type person. The name is person with lowercase. And then what if I try doing some operations on that? I'm going to call some methods. I'm going to try to access some attributes. If all these methods or attributes are public, then I can do it with freely without any restrictions. But if it's private, I cannot access the those attributes or functions directly. I have to go through a public class that in itself can call the private class, because the function is part of the person class, and therefore it can access the private members. But if I were outside the class and I declare an instance of the object and I try to access a private member, I cannot do it. So I have to indirectly access it through a public class, through a public method, that in itself has access to private. We're going to take a look at that more later on. You understand when we set the getters and so on. So just wait a little bit. So here we have our class. It's pretty much empty. So we need to add something to it. So the first thing you want to do is, when we do this, we create an instance of the class person. We create an object here. It's going to build the object based on these blueprints, but there's nothing here. So we need some kind of default blueprint. So what is like the standard blueprint? So that's why I have constructors. The constructors, when you first make an instance of a class here, you create an object. The constructors are going to be called, and typically you initialize your attributes, your object attributes in the constructor. So constructor here goes to public. You just call it the same name as the class. And for the default constructor, there are no arguments. So pretty much is like a function. And you put some braces so we can define it right away inline. Okay, so but before we can do that, we need to define some attributes for person. So a person has, for example, a name and age, right? I know there are many other attributes, but for the purpose of this introduction to classes and objects in C++, we're just gonna deal with name and age. Okay, so we can make the person have a name, right? But we need to declare a variable, and for the name it's appropriate we use a string. Okay, so a person has a name and it is type string, and then age we would use integer. Okay, so a person has attributes, these attributes here, name, which is type string, and age, which is type integer. Now we have something we can work on. Now when we do this, we create a variable here, create an object. We're going to build this object. We first initialize the name and age, otherwise we're going to have kind of like an empty person, which is kind of useless, right? So it's going, first time you do this, the default constructor is going to be called, and then you have to do some initialization. So we're going to say, okay, name to something. In this case, we're just going to put it somebody here, some default name. And then the age, I'll put 21 as the default age in case it's just a default constructor. So these are default attributes. Whenever you create an object of person class, you're going to get this for now. Okay? Now we can do try to do some operations on that. What if, okay, I create an object here, person object. Now I want to display the name, which is going to be somebody, right? What if I do this? The way you refer to the methods or attributes in a class, in an object, is like you put the dot here and you say the name of the attribute or behavior method. Okay, so let's say I want to try to access name. and then I want to try to access age. Is that okay here? You're gonna see it's not okay because, as I told you before, the private variables here cannot be accessed directly from the outside. So here we're outside the class. We have an object. We call the name. We try to access the name variable here, but you cannot do that so indirectly because it's a private member. So you're gonna get an error if you try to compile it. Okay, so take a look here. Error. Person name is private. Okay, right here. Trying to access the private member, private attribute. Also the same for age. So how do we access them if it's kind of like restricted? That's when the getter functions come along. So getter functions are public member functions that basically just does one simple thing, and that is return the value of whatever the variable you're trying to find is. And for this case, let's define the get name getter. So the way you do it is just define a function whose return type is the type of the variable you're trying to get. In this case, I want to do the get name. Okay. So first, what's the type? You're gonna return a string because name is a string. Okay, and you give the function getter function a name. Typically, you do it like this: get followed by whatever the variable name is. And I'm using camel case. That is you start everything lowercase, and the next word is the first letter is capitalized. And then I'm gonna put the arguments there. There are no arguments because I'm just trying to return the value of a variable. Put the braces, and all I do is return name. So basically, whenever I call get name, I'm going to get back the name, which is a private here, but it's okay because since it's a member function of the class itself, you have access. It has access to the name, which is private. It's not outside here, like this case. It's within the class, so it's okay. So instead of having name here, we're going to call the method, the getter method get name, okay? Just comment that out and see what we get for this. Recompile. Oops. Intro. You see, you got somebody now. We got somebody. Indeed, the behavior we want. So from the person object, you call the member function get name, which is a getter, and that returns back the value of the variable name, which is private, a private attribute. It's an attribute of person. Right there. And then you do the same with age. So let's try it out. So we're building a getter for age. It simply returns age. So it's a function that returns an integer. You give it a name, typically you say get age, followed by the variable name. Use camel case. No arguments because it's just a getter. You just want to return age. Okay. And then we're going to try this out here. We're going to also display the age, but we cannot access the age directly. You have to go through the getter. Recompile. And then we get somebody age 21, which is the default values we set in the default constructor right here. Now everything seems great, right? But what is the point of having a person that always has the same name and age? So we have to have some way of changing that. The way we're going to do that is with a setter function. It's kind of like the getter, but in this case, we're setting the value to a new one. So we take as an argument a new value, and then we change the value of the private variables to the new value that was passed. So to build that, let's do it right here. First of all, the setter function is going to be of type void. That is, there is no return type, okay? You're just going to do some operation to change the value of a variable, and nothing is going to be returned. So we're going to do set name, but we need a new name. So we're going to say string new name as an argument. And then we want to change name to the new name that was given. So we say name and assign new name to that attribute name. So whatever you pass to the function set, the setter function is going to be assigned to as the new value of name, okay? And then you do the same with set age and new age. The age is going to be set to the new age, okay? And now we can go here and call those setter functions. Say I want to set the name of my person object to something else. So first you have to reference to your object. So what is the object here? I'm working with this person variable here, which is an object. Dot to refer to the member function, and I say set name. What is the new name I want to do here? Let's say, I don't know, like this name here, Gordon Smith. That's the new name, and then I want to set the age to a new age. Set it's an integer, no quotes, 32. Okay, now I want to see what we get. We're gonna do the same thing again to display the name and age of the object after calling the setter functions. Let's compile here. Now, first we had somebody 21. That was the default value for the object attributes, right? Now, then we set the name to Gordon Smith and set the age to 32 and try to display the object attributes again. We got exactly Gordon Smith and 32. And it could be, you could set it to anything you want. And it will work. Somebody, now it's someone, 21, okay. With 22 there. See? So that's pretty much it for we learn how to do this getter and setter. Now person not only has attributes and ways to get those attributes through the getter and setter, it also has a behavior. It can walk and can talk and so on. So we can create those functions in the public section, and we can call them for example let's say void say hello. It's just gonna display hello to the screen and nothing else. We can do a cout here, hello. Put a new line, and that's the say hello method. Say hello member function of person. So we can call it outside. Say we did everything there, and then we would just want to call it. So person dot say hello. We call the say hello method of the person class, and what would we get? Indeed, a sad hello right here. Hello. Of course, you could have arguments too. You could maybe create a function, say walk, and you have to pass the number of miles or the distance you want to walk. In that case, it would be something like void walk, maybe int or float or whatever, if you want to be precise, and so on, distance. And then you do some operations here that move the person. Maybe you have some program that you have some virtual world map and you can move around and have the person has a position, which you would put in private here, position X, Y, and Z, or so on, if it's 3D, and then we would change the position of the person is, and you walk some distance. Perhaps you put some other parameters which direction and so on. Depends on how you you have it all set up, well, and so on. But you get the point where I'm saying. You can have as many methods as you want. Okay, so this is about it for this video. So we learned how to build a C++ class, and we model our class after the person. We have in a class public and private sections. Typically, private sections, you put the attributes of the object. The person has a name, age, height, weight, and so on. Typically, those would go in the private section. Then you have the public section, which has the member functions, typical behavior a person would have, such as speak, walk, run, study, watch a movie, and so on. Those would go in the public section. So public members, you can access or call them from outside here, while the private members, you cannot directly access them. You have to go through a public member function, which we call a getter, and that will return the value of that private data member to you. And then we also have the setters, which change the value of those private variables, and you can give an argument for the new values. Those are the setters. Then we also have the constructor. Whenever an object is created, in this case we just created like this, type of the class, followed by some identifier, some name, we just call it person, lowercase. Then when we do this, the default constructor is going to be called, and typically you would initialize your private variables to some default value here. Otherwise, we would get nothing and some weird stuff would appear. So it's a good practice to initialize your values when in the constructor, default constructor. Always initialize it to something to make the data consistent, so we don't get any weird data there, unknown data. Okay, so and then lastly, we just created a public member function called say hello as a behavior of the person. It just see out, say hello. You could have many other member functions in the public section. You could typically walk, say something, or study. Anything a person does, can do, a person's behavior goes here. Okay, so this is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like my videos, please subscribe. I really appreciate it. Any comments, suggestions, please post in the comment section below. And hope to see you again. Have a good one. Bye.